Hello, Truthless here, bringing you my first video. I'm really unsure what I'm doing at all, and I'm struggling to get through using the software because I've never really even heard of it before. But I'm certainly going to get through this, and I hope you'll come along with me. I've got 3 tips to give to you today, and as I pass those 3 tips to you, I want you to consider a few things. How's the sound quality? Is that some of the system noise in the background annoying you? Is my voice too loud in comparison to your preset audio? Is the video quality good? Would you like to see more actual gameplay while I'm talking about the concepts as opposed to just my running around in a practice map? Those are some of the things I'd like for you to consider. And since this is my first video, I really, it's not going to hurt my feelings at all. Any criticism that you have, because honestly I just don't even know what I'm doing. So I do want to give some helpful info though, and this is more geared toward new players, perhaps even new to first-person shooter games, but it can be of great help to someone who's new to specifically Soldier Front 2. Maybe you came from Call of Duty. And there are definitely some differences between the games. I won't be highlighting those exactly, but I will be making some comments specific to this game. And let me know what you think. Leave a comment, help me out, and I'll try to implement those suggestions in the next videos that I make. Also, give me any suggestions for topics you'd like me to do. I feel like there's a gross lack of good tutorial videos for Soldier Front 2, and I want to try to remedy that issue. And with that said, let's go ahead and start into the topics. For the first point, be aware. You should always assume that an enemy is just about to come around the corner. I've too often seen people walking around, and because they don't hear anything or see anything, they assume there's no enemies around, and so they get complacent. What you should do is assume that there's going to be an enemy right around the corner. Also, you should be paying attention to how many people are left in your team. That means looking at the top right hand corner of your screen and looking to see how many people are on your team as well as how many are left on the other team. If it's 6 versus 6, you can probably assume that the other team isn't going to be charging you just yet, but if a few people get taken out on your team and there's only 2 left on your team, 6 left on the other team, you can probably assume they're going to charge your side pretty soon, and you'll want to be aware of that ahead of time. And then also you want to pay attention to where your teammates are in relation to you. You can use your mini-map, you can also just glance around and see the name tags of your teammates, and you'll want to be aware how many are in your immediate area as well as how many are guarding some of the other entrances to the area where you're at. Let's move on to our second point, which is point at the head. In Soldier Front 2, as well as in a lot of other first-person shooter games, the fastest way to get a kill is to get a headshot. In this particular game, many of your weapons can get a one-shot kill if you shoot the person in the head. Now, I have a few suggestions regarding this and how you actually do it. Well, when you're playing, obviously, and you see the enemy, clearly you'll want to point at their head and fire at that point. Particularly in this game, it's helpful because it doesn't matter whether the enemy is running perpendicular to you or straight at you or straight away. If you can point at their head and fire, unless you have a really inaccurate weapon, that first bullet will absolutely hit them in the head, because this game is simply, I'm not sure what the term is, but it simply tags if you're pointing in a certain location in the game, it will hit that. The bullet has no travel time. It'll just immediately register as a hit in that location. So if you're pointing at the head at that point, you will hit them. So obviously you want to shoot at the head when you actually see the enemy. You'll also want to make sure you're pointing where the enemy's head will be, even though you can't see them yet. So you know they're around the next corner, and you're about to come around the corner, or they're about to come around the corner. You're going to point right where their head is supposed to be. Now, you don't know if they're crouched or not, but if they're crouched, well, they're probably a newbie and you're going to win anyways. So assume, because all the players are basically the same height, you can try to guess what the level is of the other person's head, and you want to aim at that as you go around the corner, however, whatever the situation is. So also, all the time, you should be pointing at head level. I would say 70 to 80% of Soldier Front 2 players will run around pointing at the floor or pointing closer to the floor. At no point should your crosshairs be pointed at the floor. It doesn't matter how far away the floor is. It should never be pointed at the floor. You should always be aiming at the level of the head, so that if somebody does surprise you and pops out in front of you, you just have to start shooting and you're already pointed at their head. I can't tell you how many times I get a kill simply because I happen to already be pointing in the right direction. And now on to our third point, use sound play. Now first, on this point of sound play, obviously you need to make sure you're not making noise. Anytime you are not purposefully running somewhere or purposefully jumping up to get onto an object or get into a vent or whatever, or if you're not shooting for a good reason, you should not be making any noise. Whatever your key binding is for walking, mine happens to be caps lock. I think some other people may use the control key, and some other people may use the C key. Whatever your key is fine, but make sure you're using it all the time unless you are trying to get somewhere fast, or shooting, or jumping for a good reason. Also with this, I want to point out, and this is just my personal preference, there's a move that you may see people try to perform, and that's where they're walking, that is, they're making no footstep sounds whatsoever. So walking is not just pushing the W key to walk forward. Walking is holding the key to make yourself not make any steps at all, any footstep sounds. So they'll be walking forward, not making any sound, and they'll push the run key, and that will make them move forward slightly faster. You'll see them sort of do this bobbing motion where their gun will pop up and down and pop up and down, and it's because they're switching back and forth between the walk and run keys. And some people are super good at this, but if you're not super good at that, I highly suggest not trying that move when you're in a real game with other people, because I almost always hear somebody doing that in every single game I play, and I hear where they are, and then I get the kill because I knew they were there. And the drawback to this is you're going to move slightly slower if you're just walking and not doing the walk-run. But I gotta say, the amount of time you save by doing the walk-run move is not better than the chance for dying. The other reason you might want to use the walk-run move in a game is perhaps you're just trying it. You're just trying to practice it. Hey, that's fair. Go for it. So also, the second point under using sound play is make sure you're using your headphones. Don't use speakers for this game. I know it may be more fun to use speakers and you feel more open and less cut off from the world, but you're gonna be far better if you use headphones. When you're using headphones and you hear footsteps, it's far easier to try looking around and listening for the direction of the footsteps. Even if you don't look around, you can still tell whether the footsteps are in your left ear or your right ear, and you can sort of look around and hear the changes in direction based upon the sound that's given to you. You can tell front and back by how muffled the sound is. The sound will be a lot more muffled if it's behind you, and a lot louder if the sound is coming from in front of you. Now, one thing that I frequently do is I will actually aim at the footsteps that I hear. Now, a lot of people are going to call you a wall hacker if you do this, and so I really wouldn't suggest doing it unless you are streaming live on the internet or you're using UGN to verify that you're not using any cheats. So honestly, it's a really good thing to do, but you're going to get called a wall hacker if somebody sees you doing it. But point at the footsteps and you'll be able to tell which direction they're going by following it with your crosshairs. And the last point is just under using sound play is just try to keep track of where all the footsteps are. So you may hear 5 or 6 or 7 different sets of footsteps, but it's really important to know which ones are your teammates and which ones are not your teammates, and that can kind of vector you in onto what footsteps you should be wary of. Alright, now that we've gone ahead and talked about the tips, I do want to finish off and say thank you for watching, and as I said at the beginning of the video, leave me a comment or two, let me know what you think if you have any suggestions, and I'll see you in the next video that I make.